Let's get to the Nashville Predators. We've mentioned a whole bunch of teams who have had either concerning starts or good starts. We have not touched off at all on the Nashville Predators, who have since fallen to 0-5. This team, 2 years ago, they were selling off assets. They almost made the playoffs selling off assets. They didn't make the playoffs, but they almost did. And then last year, they made the playoffs. And then they doubled down and signed some key free agents. And it's only 5 games, but they're 0-5 to start off the season. What have you made of the Nashville Predators start to the 2024-2025 campaign?
I've been a little shocked by it, to be honest. I like their off season. I do realize that just because you spend the most money on July 1st or get some of the biggest name players in free agency, it doesn't automatically equate to being a great team. I mean, probably for the reasons I mentioned. Maybe the parts don't fit quite right, or maybe it takes some time to figure out how best to use a Stamkos and where Marchessault plays, and Brady Shea and all the likes of this. But I mean, I don't think anyone would have any reason to believe that they were going to be at the bottom of the division after any meaningful amount of time. And it gets rolling in the wrong direction. I mean, we talk about vibe guys. I mean, I feel like this is like an all vibe team with the likes of Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Shen. Shout out to Luke, who just hit his 1,000th NHL game, which is
shout out to him.
It's a great milestone for any player, but especially someone like Luke, who had a couple stints in the American Hockey League 6, 7, 8 years ago. Had to wonder at that point of his NHL career was at an end, and he's managed a renaissance here in part with the work he's done with Adam Oates to make him a more efficient and effective player. Anyway, that's a sidebar, but they have a lot of these guys. I mean, Stamkos, Marchessault, these are all players I have a lot of respect for that I think are, in addition to their talent on the ice, bring an added element, and man, they're going through it already. And I saw Stamkos say on the weekend when they lost their most recent game that, it gets magnified when it's from the start of the year. Whereas, sometimes in the middle of the season, you might have this kind of losing streak and everyone's able to move past it a little bit more easily. But, I don't have any high level takeaways. I mean, they're certainly not scoring enough. Seeing more pucks get by UC Saros than you'd expect in this early going stages. To me, it's not one specific issue. Like, it's not one area of their game that isn't there. They just are not, they haven't come together. They haven't played a sustainable way to find a way to get wins. I mean, they've been in some close games. I mean, even the scores that look lopsided, there's a couple games there where they gave up empty net goals and the like. So, I do think that they're probably not as far off as 0-5 looks, but you also can't get past the fact 0-5 is a pretty big hole. I mean, you've got to now play at X number of level just to get back to 500 to get to, where you're in a position where you're trending towards a playoff spot. And make no mistake about it, for the reasons you mentioned there. 2 years ago, David Poile was departing the scene as the general manager. He was setting the table for his predecessor, Barry Trotz, when he made some of those deals, the Tanners, deal to Tampa that got them 5 draft picks, and some of the other trades that they made at the time, Granlund, to sort of refresh things on the fly. But, Nashville's a market. I think that they know they need to be competitive to keep their fans in it. There's a lot of other things in that city that can vie for your entertainment and sporting dollar. And so, they need to find a way to get back on a roll here and basically make use of all this. I mean, you didn't spend all that money on Stamkos, Shea, and Marchessault to think about next year. I mean, it was all done with the designs of being a quality team this year. And they're very interesting to see if they can pull out of it. Because if they can, I mean, what's the next shoe to drop? I don't know what that would be there.
On a scale of 1 to 10 on the worry meter, how are you feeling about the Nashville Predators?
7.5. Maybe ticking towards 8 on depending on how the wind's blowing that morning. I mean, it's just like last year, the Edmonton 2-9-1, and you expected, but like they had McDavid, you knew they were going to probably come out of it. 0-5, it's a big hole. It only takes 2 weeks to get into that hole. It probably takes a month to 6 weeks of good play to get out of it in terms of, cause you're probably, I know that the Preds did rip off that crazy win streak last year when they canceled their U2 trip or whatever. But I'm not sure that you can count on a 12 or 13 game winning streak. I mean, maybe it'll happen for them, but more than likely you're winning 3, lose 1, win 2, lose 1, and that's what it's going to take just to get back. So, I am concerned there. I don't see an easy fix either. I mean, Andrew Burnett's only been coaching that team. It's just his second season as a head coach. I don't I don't see like one big move here that's going to shake things up. I mean, that's where it's a pretty veteran team. You know, you have Yossi and Forsberg and O'Reilly and Stamkos, Marchessault. I mean, all these guys have been through a lot as NHL players. You know, even that they made a big call in the summer, right? They doubled down on UC Saros to be their goalie, signed him to an extension, ultimately in sort of a manner of speaking, you know, cost them Yaroslav Askarov, the young goalie they traded to San Jose because, you know, he saw his path to the eventual net in Nashville blocked by that move. And so, you know, they've really pushed their chips in the table to be good right now. And they haven't been nearly good enough through 2 weeks of the season.
And you mentioned being in a hole the way that the Predators are and how hard it is to get out of it. They're in a division where the Winnipeg Jets are 5-0 and they've played really well to start off their season. That's another feel-good story we can get into if we want. The Dallas Stars, who are my pick to win the Stanley Cup this year, they're also at the top of the Central Division. And then you have teams like Utah, who we've also bigged up in this division as well. Minnesota, St. Louis, and Chicago. Look at Chicago. They have a better record than the Nashville Predators right now. And don't sleep on Colorado right now. They woke up. That's a sleeping giant that I do not want to perturb in any way. You see Nathan McKinnon go 1-on-3 against the Anaheim Ducks over the weekend.
They danced with danger in that game. I know they had like the shot attempts were crazy, but they still found themselves in overtime in danger of remaining winless at that point. But then McKinnon called game. I mean, the truth is Makar is kind of off to a sketchy start in Colorado, and obviously all the players are missing. We've talked about in previous shows, but McKinnon is an X factor for them. I mean, you're right. Don't sleep on him.
Really off to that bad of a start? I don't know if I agree with that. I mean,
yeah, dude leads. I don't know. Look at the underlying numbers are painting a bad concern. Not okay. It's really early. Sorry, I don't want to. But
no. But for sure. We should get into this.
Last season, they weren't good for him. The underlyings, and again this year, you just wonder. You know, I don't know. I'd have to dig into it more, but I'm just saying it's right now. Nathan McKinnon is pulling that team, I think, sure, in a lot of directions. And you've heard Makar actually be very open and honest in interviews and call out his own play. And so, you know, I don't know that he's been up to the level that, you know, he was at 2 years ago, for example.
I think that's amazing to look at a guy like Cale Makar, who I think it's 12 points to start the year. He's tied already for the league lead in power play points with Jake Sanderson out in Ottawa. And to know that, like, I haven't looked at the underlying numbers myself with Cale Makar, but to know that is likely a season which is on the sketchy side is insane for the quality of player that Cale Makar is.
And that's the thing. I don't want to drag him here. I don't want to belittle this point because, you know, we'd all like to fail in the way he's failing or struggle in the way he's struggling, right? But I'm just saying, because the bar is pretty high for him. I don't know. I think, you know, his season's off to a bit of an up and down start. That being said, you're right. 12 points. I mean, he's still producing at one end of the ice. I just think there's a lot happening at the other end too, that you wouldn't want to see if you're the Avalanche. But I mean, the truth is they're mucking through it right now with a lineup that's not NHL contender quality because of all the players on the sidelines. I mean, we didn't mention it, but over the weekend, Val Nichushkin came back and is now skating in Denver. He can rejoin practice as of November 13th. So, you know, that's, you know, 3 weeks and a little bit away. You know, don't know what to expect from him after, you know, him being in the player assistance program since last year's playoffs. But, you know, maybe if he can get up to speed, you're only 3, 4, 5 weeks at most away from him rejoining the lineup. You know, there's maybe some hope on the horizon for the Avalanche. You're right. Don't sleep on them. It's to me, it could go like in all kinds of directions there. And that's what makes their season so interesting. Yeah, it's the West I feel like the West is fairly wide open. Like, I'm with you. I still believe Dallas is probably the team to beat. I still am pretty high on Edmonton despite their start for this year. But there's a lot of teams, like, I don't know which direction it's going to go for them, that they could end up being really good. Like, Nashville could pull their way out of this. Colorado could get everyone healthy and they could be a top tier contender. I think Vegas is probably being slept on a little bit, to be honest. I think
they are. You
know, they had kind of a weird summer and there wasn't a lot to focus on who they brought in, really. You know, I know they made some trades and they get, you know, Alexander Holtz and you know, they sign Olofsson away from Buffalo. And it's like, well, what are these moves when you're losing Chandler Stevenson and you're losing Marchessault? But I just think don't sleep on the Golden Knights. To me, they're the one team that they're kind of like my X factor in the West, but anyway, it's a wide open conference. Whereas I sort of feel like the East, the teams we thought were going to be really good look like they're going to be really good. And then it's a bit of a jump ball between, whether it ends up being the Rangers or Boston. Tampa's off to a nice start. Florida's hanging in with their injuries. Toronto's had a pretty good go there. So, the West to me seems a little less settled, I guess, in the early going.